Life is full of surprises, and that's what I want to talk about in this podcast episode. How change affects us in different ways, for better or worse. How it changes our views, our goals, our purpose. How it drives us to seek more, to do more, and to be more. Whether you're an individual, a business owner, a CEO, or an aspiring leader, you know what I mean. There is so much to explore on this episode, so let's dive in. This past year has been a roller coaster for me. I've been balancing school, work, learning, and personal growth. I've been working on different projects with the company I'm currently with. But to do this episode, I need to be in the right mindset. I don't want to waste your time with something that is not valuable or meaningful. I put a lot of thought and effort into each episode. I review my notes, reflect on my experiences, and analyze myself. And I share that with you in a concise and engaging way. I'm always learning and improving. And I hope this podcast reflects that. But it also requires me to be in a certain mood to share my thoughts with you, to be honest and vulnerable with you sometimes. And I think that's why you listen. I appreciate your support and feedback. Thank you for listening to the last episode, and please feel free to ask me any question that you want me to answer in future episodes. Now, this episode is a mix of my notes that I collected over the week from reading, listening, and thinking. So, without further ado, let's get started. This is Rebuild and Evolve, and I am Omobude. Living in a world that is super intense, sometimes crazy, and always challenging and always unpredictable. This podcast is simple. Every Thursday, I'll be sharing my personal experiences with you as a student entrepreneur, juggling academics, my personal life, building creativity, and other brands and companies in between. On this same podcast, I'll be sharing the lessons I've learned and also insights on what it's like behind the scene and the deep dark thoughts no one else will share with you. This is not scripted, and this is often on top of my head. This is Rebuild and Evolve. The first thing I want to share with you today is a bit sad, and it's something that I've been thinking about for a while, but I didn't mention it before, and it's this sentence. Running a business is like having your heart broken over and over again. The truth is, life is full of heartaches, heartbreaks, and there are days when I receive negative emails from organizations, companies, or individuals that I've wanted to work with. But when I choose to do what I do, I also choose to face a lot of emotional uncertainty and pain. And I don't have any control over when that pain or bad news will come. And that's why if you want to be a leader, you have to be resilient. And that's so important. You have to be. And here's the harsh reality. We all get paid according to how much bullshit we can handle. And that's why if you want to aim higher, if you want to be a leader, then resilience is crucial. And to be honest, resilience is not something that I think anyone is born with. But I think experience shapes you to have resilience. You know, when bad things happen, we go through a process, and that could be hardship in your career, your relationships, your friendships. There are different ways that we react. Some of you, or rather some of us, and sometimes me, just want to ignore it because we don't want to deal with the problem. So we just put it aside. Struggles can catch us off guard, but learning healthy ways can help us overcome them. And that's why we need a set of skills that I call resilience that can help us cope with this tough times faster and get us back on track. In the past and sometimes now, bad news would make me angry, hateful, but gradually, bad news only makes me sad for a few minutes or an hour at most, and then I move on. Really, why bother with regrets over things you can't change? That's what I want to share with you today. And I have 5 tips on how I've done this over time. Now, the first on my list is about rewriting your story. And what I mean by this is when something bad happens, we often keep replaying the events in our head. We begin to overanalyze things and feel the pain again and again. And this is what they call dwelling, or I will call ruminating. Now, this is the worst thing you can do to yourself. It keeps you stuck and brings you down. What helps is the practice of expressive writing. Yeah, I'm much of a writer, and I've learned to, write my emotions down. And practice of expressive writing moves you forward, or better still, when you begin to talk to someone or when you have someone close to you that you feel comfortable sharing your thoughts with. Now, it helps you gain new perspectives on the challenge of your life or the bad things that have happened to you. Now, what is expressive writing? Now, this is the ability to write down your thoughts freely, or better still, free write for 20 minutes about the issue, exploring the deepest, darkest thoughts about the issue and just letting it out. This is why I recommend journaling. Now, the second tip or the second key point is about how you build the confidence to face bad moments head on. And that for me is a form of resilience. Now, this is what I call confronting fears. I am as scared of things as everyone else. I wasn't born fearless. There is a philosophy in my head that is deeply rooted and gives people the impression that I am not afraid of anything because of the way I handle things. And I am really going to give insights on how I have personally overcome fear in my life. And it is a gradual approach. So, what I have always done is slowly and repeatedly exposing myself to things that scare me the most in small doses. I know it might sound crazy when I tell you that I used to be scared of the camera. Okay, now every time I see someone point the camera at my face, I would just wish that the earth would just open up and swallow me whole. Now, a few of my friends know this, and what I did was back in 300 level, I had to pick a skill to learn. It was a mandatory course, and I picked photography. I had the opportunity to handle the camera, and it was scary at first. And I can remember the look on my CDS lecturer's face when he found about this. Now, I experienced what it was like to photograph and be photographed. I took time to work on myself, and daily I would put the phone camera to my face and hit record and say something random. When I finally came back home for my IT training, I started to create content at my pace, put the pieces together, and that was it. And over time, I gradually increased the challenge to a stage now where I feel totally confident in front of the camera. Now, when I speak in front of the camera, I imagine speaking to my friends or my siblings, and I feel totally comfortable speaking to new people. Now, I believe with all fears, with all challenges, and a lot of the time with talent as well, there are things that come from practice. Try, fail, learn, and improve. So that kind of exposure therapy is something we can bring into our lives to help us overcome our fears. Fears may never be fully overcome. That's not necessarily the point. I know I still feel nervous before I click record, but with time, it gives us great confidence to face some of the things that will liberate us, that will make us successful and happy. So it is actually important. Number 3 on this particular topic on resilience is practicing self-compassion. And fear, adversity, pain, hard times can make us feel incredibly lonely. Sometimes we feel like we are the only ones who are struggling, and we wonder what's actually wrong with us. In these situations, learning to practice self-compassion and recognizing that someone suffers, which is part of being human, is one of the most important things we can do. We all have a voice in our head that can be either kind and supportive, like a good friend, or harsh and negative, like a hater. So, practicing self compassion is training that voice in your head to be our friend. Self compassion involves showing yourselves or showing ourselves kindness, facing our own suffering with warmth and understanding, and most importantly, without judgment. It's amazing how that voice in our head can influence our life, and there are 3 steps to developing self compassion. Number 1, start by acknowledging how you feel. Say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. It hurts. I'm stressed. And when you actually do say this, it brings about the realization that it's just for a while. And this is quite important. Secondly, you remember that you're not alone in your suffering or your stress or your pain. Remind yourself that suffering is part of life. We all experience it and we all go through it. And 3, be kind to yourself about why you are suffering. I guess that starts with accepting yourself as you are, being patient with your suffering, and realizing that this too shall pass. But also reflecting and reminding yourself that you have suffered before and got through it, and knowing that you'll get through this too. So treat yourself how you want your best friend to treat you in a tough time, and also treat yourself like you treat your best friend when they are going through something as well. And that's the key, and that's why personally I'm working on in my life. And over time I've learned to be more self-compassionate. I have learned to put things into perspective, and I think that this perspective has helped me stay resilient and cope with a lot. And the 4th point on resilience is meditation. And I have realized that most of our pain is in the past or in the future. But when we pause, we find peace. And practicing mindfulness brings us to a present peaceful moment and helps us deal with negative emotions as they come up. It gives us some kind of defense mechanism for being in the battlefield. And one thing I didn't know until I started thinking about this point of resilience is that I have been, micro meditating almost every single day when I walk or when I'm in class or, taking a walk home without even realizing it. Now, throughout the day, I will do something that is apparently called mindful breathing. Now, I deal with anxiety attacks or panic attacks. So, when this is about to surface, I practice mindful breathing, and it helps. Now, mindful breathing just involves paying attention to your physical sensation of breathing, the air moving out of your lungs and through your nostrils, and the expansion of your chest. And when the mind wanders away, which will inevitably happen, because it's hard to focus for a lot of us, as well as myself. You bring your attention back to your breathing, and you can do this for 15 minutes or an hour if you have the time. And like I've been doing for 5 minutes when I feel the kind of feeling in my stomach that we sometimes feel. How do I describe this? It's like a rising pressure. So I take deep breaths, and it's amazing how you feel right away, after such exercise. I started this exercise last year because I was having a lot of anxiety attacks. The pressure was just too much to handle. And I discovered this and it actually works. Now, this is what I call emotional resilience, which is the ability to use mindful breathing and become less negative and the outcome of situations, or rather, you know, it's more about the ability to use mindful breathing and become less negative about the outcome of situations. And I think it's amazing. Your state of mind is crucial because it affects everything else. Now, everything begins rather with your state. And when you feel bad emotionally or mentally, you get sick. Now, when stress takes over, good habits slips away. So we need to practice meditation, and I actually do recommend this. Almost all the time we get into our tight spaces, and when that group or that negative thought or bad news comes in, taking the breath, taking it in and out actually is refreshing. And lastly, on my list, I have cultivating forgiveness. And the more I live, the more I realize that forgiveness is a solution to so much. And a friend told me this last year, and it says, forgiveness is freeing a prisoner and realizing you're the prisoner all along. Wow, that is some deep shit. I actually felt it was, that was something deep. That was some deep shit right there. And I was like, this is the most profound thing I've had in a long time. Now, forgiveness is good for your mental and physical health. We know that, but it also helps to cope better with bad news. And oftentimes, forgiveness is hard. I know for sure that I find forgiveness hard, especially when someone or something or some kind of situation wrongs me. Now, it makes me question everything. It makes me question everything that matters to me. It lowers my self-esteem. It affects my self-control. And I feel vulnerable. So I put up a shield, which is resentment, a weapon to protect myself from it ever happening again. And the truth is, we have to admit how we feel and how it's impacting our lives. And then we have to decide to forgive them or the situation, which means letting go of the resentment or the ill will. And this brings the end of the first segment of this podcast. My apologies that it's long. I'm willing to touch some certain areas, and the next on my list, or the next um topic is why we shouldn't want a pay rise. You know, an ideology I've actually come to understand is that running a business just to make money is a terrible idea. And this is mostly why people actually started, because of they want to, make some money, and they feel money is happiness. But the thing about it, or the truth about it, is if you get paid well and avoid running a business, I actually would recommend you do that, because running a business to just make money is really a terrible idea. Now, but the problem is pay is a trade-off for the amount of bullshit that you're personally willing to handle. So even if you don't run the business, if you're paid really well, you're going to have to deal with a certain level of bullshit that the business owner or CEO faces. Now, being an entrepreneur, doing what I do, is a bit of a flaw. The level of sacrifice, which I talked about on the last episode, the non-stop roller coaster rides, the uncertainty that you have to face as an entrepreneur or someone who is building a business, makes you kind of wonder, why would anyone choose to do it? Surely it makes more sense to get paid well and not have to face the, top level bullshit, criticism, and responsibility. Now, a little confession I have is that sometimes I feel envious of people who don't have to do what I have to do. Sometimes I wish I had their life. However, and believe me when I say this, I didn't choose to be an entrepreneur. I didn't choose to think how I think. I didn't choose to be who I am. And there were never a moment of pause and planning and thinking. And this is just how the chemicals in my body decided to move. And this is just who I am. And it's the thing that makes me tick. Now, why I said you shouldn't get a pay rise, I guess what I meant is that you shouldn't always necessarily think that the answer to happiness is having a responsibility rise. I've seen how, I've seen over the last 3 years, and where I feel that a pay rise is a promotion of more responsibility, and it is a horrible idea, a horrible decision for someone, and it has ruined their lives. And I really mean this. And I don't think this is something we talk about more in society, because there's this kind of unspoken assumption that more money equals more happiness, or more success, or more fulfillment. And that's not always the case. Sometimes more money equals more stress, more responsibility, more problems, more expectations, more pressure. And sometimes more money equals less freedom, less joy, less balance, less peace, and less health. So before you ask for a pay rise or a promotion or a new job, ask yourself, are you willing, or are you ready to handle the bullshit that comes with it? Or are you willing to sacrifice other aspects of your life for it? Or are you doing it for the right reasons, or just to impress others, or to prove something to someone or to yourself? Seriously, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that money is bad, or that you shouldn't aim high, or that you shouldn't pursue your passion. I'm just saying that money is not everything, and you shouldn't let it blind you from what really matters to you. Money is a tool, not a goal. Money is a means, not an end. Money is a resource, not a reward. So be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it, and it might not be what you really want or need or deserve, and it might not make you happy or successful or fulfilled. And okay, that is all for today. Now, thank you for listening to this podcast of Rebuild and Evolve. And I hope you find it helpful and insightful. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to reach out to me. And I would love to hear from you. And please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. It really helps me a lot. And until next time, stay resilient, stay positive, and stay awesome. This is Faith Omobude, signing off.